If I had my druthers, if I was Elon Musk, I would have said, dude, no, you can't post that if it's including things like children's names, etc., doxing information. I disagree with Elon Musk banning the guy that put out the supposedly Iranian-hacked dossier on J.D. Vance. First off, clearly I didn't get to see a lot of that because I feel that by the time I knew this was a story, that dude was already banned. I think that the part that you can't do is you can't have his phone number, you can't have his social security number, you can't have the home address of where his children live and shit like that. Now, there is a counter argument that if you're a politician, you have to expect that some of that stuff's going to be publicly available anyways. That's true. So it is true, though, that as a public figure, you do have an expectation that, like, your home address will eventually get out there. Now, that's different than your phone number and your social security number is really crazy, like, for that to be released. But certainly anyone that's putting a document out that has your number on it that's not good. The social security number is clearly out of control. Now, let me be quite clear. I did not see what this guy posted on X. It was deleted, this supposed journalist. Because I've seen other people say it didn't have his social security number. It didn't have his home address. And then I've seen people say, yeah, it did. And I've seen Elon say that's why this dude got temporarily banned. Because that's doxing, and you can't do that. So I can't sit here and tell you with 100% clarity that this dude, that J.D. Vance's social security number was in this document that was released. I don't know. Even if information is publicly available, a politician's a little different. If you had to put your address in a public filing, I guess that's one thing. So you read it yesterday? I'll have to look through this. I'm not going to do it on stream now, but the brief stuff that I saw, I'm like, It didn't seem that important to me. Didn't seem like there was anything too shocking. So I just want to start off with any personal information like that. I understand why a platform would be like, no, you can't do that. You can't put a document out that has someone's social security. However, beyond that, no, it should not be banned. It shouldn't be. I think even if this was hacked by Iran, it should still be allowed to be out there. I do. I don't want social media companies telling me that I can't share information because allegedly it was gotten by ill-gotten means. Think of what the implications of that means. Couldn't talk about WikiLeaks. Couldn't talk about Edward Snowden's revelations. Couldn't talk about the Pentagon Papers. Couldn't, that to me is universal. It just is. Now, as a journalist, you should be held to a set of standards that, hypothetically, if you are a legitimate journalist, that you should hold to yourself. You shouldn't burn your sources. You should be advocating for the truth. Now, I know the majority of our mainstream media journalists aren't journalists, they're propagandists. But one of the things you should hold to is you should basically not be putting shit out there that is unsubstantiated rumors or that's doxing. I think that that's bad form. Valid reason for the censorship would be that it includes things like social security numbers, doxing information. I don't have a problem with, such as the Hunter Biden laptop, I don't have a problem censoring images, compromising images such as nude photos, sex tapes. That's fine. I'm perfectly fine with a social media company saying we're not going to allow that stuff on, which makes sense anyways because many of these social media companies aren't going to allow sex tapes and nudity anyways. And I think a compromising video or photo released of someone against their will, I think that's reason. But the idea of compromising information, you took money from this company in China, hypothetically. Yeah, we should all be allowed to see that. Children's names, yeah, probably would be reason to. Now, I think best practice on this If I had my druthers, if I was Elon Musk, I would have said, dude, no, you can't post that if it's including things like children's names, etc., doxing information. However, if you black those out, post away. That's what I would say. And again, Ranger and Rogue apparently read this thing. It did not seem that salacious anyways. Put it out there. This is it. This is the best they got. Foreign countries that apparently have assassination task force to kill Donald Trump. And the best information they could hack is like some benign, well, here's some things that J.D. Vance has said in the past. I personally think that it's a mistake if this information isn't allowed out there. Now, of course, good friend of the show, Pisco, he's going to do all these posts. You have to understand, at least now he's putting a /S for sarcasm at the end of his post, but Pisco goes on this, oh, this is election interference. Oh, rah, 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 rah. No. The joke is he's trying to say, well, everyone flipped out before the election when the Hunter Biden laptop story was censored. That wasn't what was election interference. It wasn't that the Hunter info was censored that was election interference. It was that the government and former government officials primed social media companies to retract or censor information critical of Biden, particularly Hunter Biden, and now in the words of Zuckerberg, even Hunter Biden connected to places like Burisma. That was the problem. I could say this particular outlet is basically an in-kind donation to the Democrats. I find that to be true, such as ABC. You saw their performance at the debate as moderators. We saw that even after assassination attempts, 94% of the coverage of Donald Trump was negative. Over 90% of the coverage of Kamala Harris was positive. They're basically an in-kind donation to the Democrats. There are questions about what does that mean, as are you really a news outlet, a journalistic outlet? But ABC could choose to run or not run stories that they want, and that's not tantamount to election interference. Makes them a shitty outlet. The same is true of Facebook. Facebook could choose to say, we're not going to allow you to post any post about Kamala Harris's relationship with Willie Brown. If we see the words Kamala Harris and Willie Brown in a post together, we're going to censor that. Is that election interference? I don't think so. Screw Facebook. They're doing it to help Kamala Harris. But if they make that action on their own, they should be allowed to do it. I think that would be a good reason for you to not be on Facebook. So if X decides we're going to help Donald Trump, and the reason we're censoring this information has nothing to do with social security numbers, nothing to do with J.D. Vance's kids' names, nothing like that. It's just, we want to help Trump. That's not election interference. It's shitty. It is. But that's not election interference. You could say, well, X is Elon Musk's trying to help Trump. Okay? The problem would be if we had former government officials and current government officials that was reaching out en masse to these social media platforms saying, hey, there's going to be this story coming out about J.D. Vance, and it's all Iranian disinformation. And so when it comes out, we're trying to prevent foreign election interference. That's election interference. That is the government knowing that a story is coming out, priming social media companies to say that it's fake, knowing that the likely outcome will be that they will then censor it. I'll go further. The problem with the Hunter Biden laptop story wasn't even that the information was censored, which it was, and that led to less people overall being able to see the story. However, there is an argument that's been made by people on the other side, and there's validity to this, which is, but wait a minute. It's sort of the Streisand effect. When you say you can't look at this, what you're actually doing is driving more eyeballs to it. So just because you couldn't see the Hunter story on Facebook for a certain amount of time or on Twitter for a certain amount of time, there were still places you could go to see it, and more people were driven there. I would argue still less overall than if these were never censored in the first place on these platforms. However, there is validity to like, yeah, there's probably people that are like, oh, maybe I would have just cursory looked at it before, but now that I know that it's banned, now I'm really going to look into this. There must be something there. The fact that it's hacked by Iran is election interference from Iran, but it's not. I think you're talking about Pisco here, yeah. The real problem wasn't how many eyeballs got to see the laptop story or not. The real problem was because former government officials weighed in and government officials primed social media companies saying this was Russian disinformation, that independent moderate voters thought that this story wasn't true. They thought it was Russian disinformation, which is garbage. That was the real problem. It wasn't, oh, we couldn't see this story. It's that huge sections of this country saw the story and said, but that's a lie. It's disinformation. Because all of these former intel officials and government agents told us, nope, it's all Russian lie. And of course, there was polling that suggested afterwards that as many as a third of Democrats would have not voted for Joe Biden had they believed the laptop story to be true. That was the election interference. It was two things. Or it's two things branching out from the same thing. The government and former government agents' involvements in burying this story. Is that what's going on with the J.D. Vance document? Is that what's happening? Maybe. If we find out that the federal government is contacting social media and been contacting them for months, and they knew that this document was legitimate, this document that Iran supposedly hacked of J.D. Vance, they knew it was legit, and yet they reached out to social media companies and said, listen, Iran's going to make up some disinformation and it's going to be about J.D. Vance. And so we don't want foreign election interference. If that's the case, yes, absolutely, that is the federal government actively involved in trying to subvert a story that they think would affect the election. And in that case, it would have been to the benefit of Donald Trump. I will 100% unambiguously say, if we find out that that's the case, I condemn that completely. Easy enough to understand? Do we have any evidence of that? Do we have publicly dozens upon dozens of former intel officials coming out saying, this J.D. Vance story is clearly Iranian propaganda? Do we have that? I haven't seen any evidence of it. So at the very least, it doesn't rise to the level of election interference that we saw in 2020 because we don't have the public statements from former intel officials. But I'm willing to be open to seeing evidence that actors within the FBI were priming social media companies to censor this Iranian hack of J.D. Vance. Now, the irony is with someone like Pisco, he's making the argument, well, we should have equal standards. I agree, Pisco. Absolutely agree. If I think that, for example, the WikiLeaks story of Hillary Clinton's emails and the DNC emails should be allowed to be public and talked about, why shouldn't I feel the same about this J.D. Vance story? I do. I absolutely feel the same way. If I think that it was wrong to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story, why shouldn't I think it's wrong to censor this? There are a few caveats. I think it's okay to censor Social Security numbers. I think it's okay to censor children's information and stuff like that. But other than that, I agree. Yeah, you're right. See? Even standard. See how easy that is? Yeah, you're right. This story should be allowed to get out there. We should not want social media telling us that we can't read stories critical of politicians, whether it be gotten by ill-gotten means or not, whether it be a politician you support or you don't. Period. Definitively. I can't be more... Does everyone get that? I cannot be more forceful in saying this. I don't care. I don't care if it's records of Donald Trump. Should be allowed to be read. You could say, we should go after the people that hacked the material. Perhaps the material should have been vetted before a legitimate media site tried to put it out. All of those arguments are fine, one thing. I don't want social media telling me that I can't look at stuff. Garbage. Again, there are caveats. Compromising photo. I don't mind that there was censorship of nude photos of Hunter Biden. I don't mind that. I think that that's fair game. to censor that. I don't want compromising photos. I don't think there are any compromising photos of me, but theoretically, if someone's taking pictures of me on the toilet and I get those pictures become publicly available, I would want those not to be viewable on social media sites to the best of my ability. I think you all would want that too, I hope. No one really wants to see those photos of me. Anyways, so that's it. I'm absolutely of one standard on this. No ambiguity. Period. Right? But I thank Pisco. I thank him so much for now being someone that's concerned about double standards. Great. So, Pisco acknowledges that 2020 was election interference. It took us 4 years, but we got there. Yes! You're right, Pisco. 2020 was election interference. Thank you so much. You're right. The federal government weighing in a story that they knew was true, the Hunter Biden laptop story, and gaslighting social media companies to censor it, 51 former Intel officials, and then the social media companies censoring that was election interference. Thank you so much, Pisco. Thank you. An election decided by 40,000 votes in 3 swing states. Great job. Took us 4 years, but we got there. Now, it'd be interesting to go back and see Pisco's posts that were critical of that. Right? Wouldn't that be interesting? Oh, they don't exist? Huh. It's almost like Pisco doesn't believe the bullshit that he's saying.